What's up, Keymakers? Today, I'm going to share with you the 5 pillars of your business and what that might look like for you as an entrepreneur or a solopreneur. You wake up, drive 30 minutes to work as an employee at your 9 to 5, which you hate, and all you can think about at work is providing for your family, starting your business, moving it forward, changing the world, and in the process, living the life of freedom and fulfillment you've always imagined. This podcast helps you transition from employee to entrepreneur. My name is Bradley G. Smith, and welcome to the Keymaker Nation podcast. Okay, guys, so I got a couple of things to share before that. Some good news. I just got this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. They both got back to me in the same day. So now we are on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher. So sweet, and I'm really excited about that. So just wanted to share that good news with you guys. So now you can find it in all of those places, but you can also find it on YouTube. And if you want to look at the transcript of an episode, just go to keymakernation.com/podcast/whatever number of the episode is. In this case, it's number 26. So it'd be keymakernation.com/podcast/26. So yeah, so that's that. And then I also have been thinking as I get in the car every day and get ready to drive home, and I've sort of been like mulling around ideas in my head. A lot of that is just off the cuff, and it's based on what I've heard throughout the day. And I want to start being a little bit more methodical about that with you guys, because a lot of times it doesn't come off as very polished, which is fine. I don't think it necessarily needs to be perfectly polished, but it would be a little bit better if I could have some of my show notes written down so I could reference them much easier, and then also show ideas written down so that I could reference them much easier when I'm trying to talk to you guys, and so that I have my ideas written down somewhere, and then I can just reference new episodes on the fly, and be ready to just basically share a new episode at any time. And I'll just go look at my list of episodes that I haven't done yet in my notes. So I got so my last episode I did in the kitchen, and I did that with an iPad, right? And it was like, I listened to it and I was like, man, this is like one of the best ones I've done. But I was all doing it based off of a format, a very specific format, and I had already written out the show notes ahead of time. So that was nice, and it made me start thinking that just having this journal would be nice. So I ordered a cheapo $11 journal on Amazon, and I'm expecting to get that like maybe tomorrow or something like that. So I'll at least, I should have a little bit better of a semblance of show ideas and sort of the progression of my show here in the future. So I'm excited about that. And then there was what was my other idea here? I'm drawing a blank on that. I think that was pretty much it. If something else hits me, I'll bring it up here in just a minute. But so yeah, basically I wanted to talk to you guys about the 5 pillars of business, right? And the 5 pillars of business are something that, of course, I didn't come up with, but my sort of talk about it, what I wanted to talk with you guys about, what that might look like with you guys as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs in the early stages might look like, right? So the 5 pillars of business, I got this idea from Funnel Hackers Radio podcast, and Dave Woodward was talking to one of his guests, and a business consultant who basically goes in and helps businesses set up their standard operating procedures and sort of basically their structures to put in place so that they can reproduce things over and over again in their business. And you hire somebody, and what are your expectations for someone? Okay, so you've got that part of your business, and then and then you sort of have your business strategies. And so anyways, this guy sort of just goes in and helps people set up all those standards that they need in their business in order to grow it and move it forward. Because a lot of times as young entrepreneurs, or even entrepreneurs of small companies, maybe not young entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs of small companies, we don't always just spend the time on our business and the things that need to be accomplished in our business. Instead, we end up being the doers or the action takers all the time, instead of taking a step back and making sure that things are getting executed on as they should be. So this is sort of like just sort of getting an idea of the 5 pillars of business helps you understand what you need to sort of be focusing on in your business. And we sort of touched on this a little bit with the episode where we talked about the 3 archetypes: hipster, hacker, and hustler. And those still sort of fit into these 5 pillars of business, right? And so the 5 pillars of business, let me just say what they are. The 5 pillars are marketing, sales, deliverables, like your delivery of your product or service, your operations, and your finances, right? So marketing, of course, would be the hook that you give to your clients to basically have them raise their hand and say that they're interested in what it is that you're offering. Sales is basically the part of your business where you take somebody from the marketing phase and you try to close business with them. And that could all be done online without ever picking the phone up and talking to you on the phone. That could all be done online. Sometimes some businesses require a sales contact, and as we've sort of been seeing here with the proliferation of the internet and just all the new services that are out there on social media, and the ability to create better websites and funnels for your websites, the sales part of the process is much smaller than it used to be. So if you're going to talk to somebody on the phone, if your business is set up for that kind of product, that is probably generally going to happen towards the end of the process, right? Of the problem and solution phase of the buyer's process. So then there's the deliverables. How are you going to make sure the client gets what they paid for? Was it a service that you promised them? Was it a product that you offered them? Was it software that you offered them? Was it some sort of results that you offered them that they paid for? And how are you going to make sure that somebody is executing on making sure that the clients are getting what they need so that they buy more from you or renew their contract with you? So that's the deliverable side of the business. And then the operations side is the piece that keeps it all together, right? The part of the organization that keeps it all together. Maybe there's an HR component of your business, and maybe there's somebody who's part of the IT infrastructure side of your business. They make sure people get laptops. They make sure people have the software that they need on their laptops. And there's a couple of operational pieces that have to be in place in order for the business to move forward, right? And then there's also the finance part, right? How are we making sure in an overarching fashion that the business is making the money that it needs in order to continue and move forward? So that is, sort of built into the whole piece of the business, but also then, you've got other things to account for in finance, like payroll and making sure, the smaller pieces where you're executing, make sure people are getting paid, making sure other things are happening as expected. So those are the 5 pillars: marketing, sales, deliverables, operations, and finance. So what does that look like for you as an entrepreneur? Well, generally speaking, especially in the early stages, employee to entrepreneur, you may outsource some of those things, but you're probably going to be doing a handful of those things. So you're probably going to be doing things like making sure the ads are written to draw people into your sales copy. And then the sales copy is going to help make the transition from marketing to purchasing, and maybe even they will purchase immediately off the website, or they'll pick up the phone and call, right? And so then you may also be writing the ad copy. You may be writing the design of the landing page where the ad copy is on. You may be doing the design of the landing page the ad copy is on. Maybe you'll be doing the graphics, some of the graphics for the landing page that the users are coming to. And then for the sales part, I already mentioned sales copy, but maybe you'll be talking on the phone with someone to try to close a deal and try to have them get to know you and your company a little bit better. And that's just for marketing and sales so far. And then for deliverables, maybe you've promised them a specific service, and so let's use a really simple one. For example, maybe you've promised them that you'll build a website for them, and so your you spend your time as the entrepreneur, maybe the solopreneur, building the website. Maybe it's with something like WordPress. Maybe it's custom HTML. Maybe it's custom coding that's outside of something like WordPress. Maybe all you're doing is building funnels for them. You're a funnel agency or something like that. Or maybe you have something completely different that's offline altogether. Maybe you're delivering a consulting document for them. You've reviewed a portion of their business and you think that they can modify some elements to their business that will help them get a little bit further ahead, right? And so you deliver a consulting document to them, and that's sort of offline. But then operationally, you got to sort of make sure things are happening, right? You've got to make sure if you have employees that if you're set up, if you're small enough, you may or may not be doing deliverables, you may or may not be doing insurance or benefits, and you may or may not be doing the hiring. You may or may not be doing some other things related to operations. And so, sorry, I got sort of tripped up there for a second. I had a police officer close to me, and I wanted to make sure that I could just keep talking while he wouldn't get distracted by me talking on the phone. And I'm completely hands-free in terms of the phone, so I should be good, but I just wanted to make sure. So, and then there's also the finance portion of it. The way I do the finance stuff, I have an accountant that takes all of my taxes at the end of the year, and the accountant basically will take the books that I've put together and make sure they look good, make sure they're shored up in every scenario, make sure he asks questions if he has any questions after reviewing the books that I've put together. And then, but what I've even figured out even recently to make the to do the books a little bit easier, a very cheap option, very cheap for a small business owner, is QuickBooks. And you can basically get on QuickBooks and plug it into literally all your bank accounts. So they'll log into all of your bank accounts and download your transactions right into QuickBooks. So it's almost all hands off. Maybe you have to categorize a couple of things, but that's going to be so much easier for me as I try to take what they have produced and submit that to my accountant. It's going to be so much easier. It's going to save a lot of time at the end of each of the quarters or annually, depending on how I have my business set up or how you have your business set up. So that's sort of some of the ways that this might affect you as an employee moving into that entrepreneur phase, or as a solopreneur, right? You might be putting on hats for every one of these pillars at some point. And the idea here, just like when we talked about the 3 archetypes, the idea is that you figure out where you need the most help, right? If the guy who was talking on the podcast was basically mentioning, and I sorry, I don't know his name. I wish I did, but it's a really easy look up. Just go to Funnel Hacker Radio Podcast and look up the 5 pillars of business. But he basically talked about you need to identify the areas in the areas of these 5 pillars in your business where things aren't going, as well as they could be going. There, he uses red, yellow, green, and if you have any part of those 5 pillars that are basically red, in other words, they need some help, that's where you start outsourcing if you're really small, or where you start hiring experts in those particular fields. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the 5 pillars of business. So you got it. It's marketing, sales, deliverables, operations, finance, and I would recommend, if you're just starting out, that one of your biggest focus points is on the sales part of everything. Right now, you need to figure out how to market yourself and get your brand out there. There's lots of different ways to do that. We'll probably talk about some of those ways in upcoming episodes, but you need to figure out the sales part, because if you get people interested in your services but you can't close them, whether it's through web copy and funnels and or your website, or over the phone, depending on sort of how your business is set up, then you're not ever going to get the clients, you're not ever going to be able to close the clients, and you won't have business. And without sales, you just won't have the money coming in order to keep the business, in order to maintain the business. So focus on sales. I've already given some key points about focusing with sales in the past, and I've already sort of talked about some of that, and I will talk more about that in the future. But good news, while I was sitting here talking through those 5 pillars, and like I said, that's the whole point of me getting a journal, so I don't forget about specific points that I'm trying to talk about. There was one point I was trying to talk about before I got into the 5 pillars, and that point was specifically related to episodes on the weekend. So I thought of a really good show idea for the weekend that I don't think I've seen done in a lot of podcasts. Usually what I see done in a lot of podcasts is just another if you're going to do any episode on the weekend, it will just be another episode on the weekend. But I thought, why not do a weekend review, so that anybody who comes in can very quickly jump into the weekend reviews. And I realize that might be sort of like shooting myself in the foot at some point, because people might want to just go for the weekend reviews. But I think if the content is good enough, people will want to listen to as much of it as they can. But the weekend reviews will basically be an opportunity for me to share what I covered in the week, and then let people jump right into whatever episode that makes sense for them in terms of what they hear based on the weekend review. So I thought on the weekend I'll do a recording on Friday so that I can release it on Saturday about the weekend review, everything I covered for the week, and then Saturday you'll get the weekend review. And then Sunday, you'll get what's next, basically, like upcoming episodes or what I'm thinking about covering next. And that may or may not always hold true, but for the most part, it probably will hold up in terms of what I'll be covering the next week. So that'll be on Sundays. And so come Monday, I will... it'll probably just be a new episode. So like Sunday evening, I'll record a regular episode. And then Mondays, you'll just get like the regular set of episodes. So that's sort of where I'm at with it. That's what I'm thinking in terms of what I'll, something new that I'll do for the shows. And I think that'll be helpful, especially for new listeners to get into and figure out where they want to jump into exactly. And the weekend review will just basically recap as briefly as possible, but also getting across the key points of the current week's podcast. So that was that little nugget that I wanted to share, and hopefully the journal that I have will help prevent me from forgetting things like that in the future so that I can remember it right when I want to say it, instead of at the very end. So that's it for today, guys. 5 pillars of business, and some good show notes and show related things. So that's it, guys. I will catch you in the next episode. Hey guys, don't forget to join me in the Keymaker Nation private Facebook group. If you're listening to the podcast via iTunes, please rate and review. And if you're listening via YouTube, don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, thanks for listening.